Let's get started. I would say take your seats, but there are no seats to take. Definitely don't want you to take any seats out of here. Um, Welcome to this session. Um, Excellencies, thank you for being here. This session is all about how do we reconcile two really important things. How do we reconcile the need to address immediate global crises around food security and malnutrition? On the other hand, how do we build the resilience of our food systems to shocks, such as climate-induced shocks and other shocks? It's very difficult to do both of those things at the same time, especially if you're a policymaker being pushed by all different constituencies to figure that out. At the heart of that, resolving that trade-off, I think, is how do we find win-win solutions in the food, nutrition, and climate space? So that's what we'll be trying to do in the next 50 something minutes. I'm going to ask everyone, all our panelists, to be really tight on time. I will I will look sternly at you if you're over time. But you'll probably ignore me anyway, knowing you guys. Let me first invite to the stage the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin. He's the Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland. He's also the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Defence. Micheál, over to you. I caught you before you're ready. Okay, good. I think over there.
Thank you very much indeed, Lawrence, for the introduction. And I'm delighted to open and to participate in this side event today, which is co-hosted by Ireland and the United States. Good to see you here. The event is taking place with an ever worsening context of global food insecurity, hunger, and malnutrition. It's more important now than ever before that we strengthen our response to these global challenges and that we work together in doing so. And this is why events such as today's are important to signify our ongoing collaboration and shared commitment to reverse the worrying trends in global food security and nutrition. We are reminded almost daily that our collective ambition to end hunger by 2030 remains far from our grasp. As we near the end of 2023, millions of people continue to face acute food insecurity and hunger. For those who are attending this climate conference, it will come no surprise that climate change is one of the primary drivers of food and nutrition insecurity. In 2022, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change emphasized to us that food insecurity and malnutrition has increased as a result of climate change, with countries in Africa among the most severely affected. The evidence is right in front of us. Almost weekly, we are seeing extreme and devastating climate events unfold across the world, doing untold damage to people's lives and livelihoods. There are also other weather and climatic events which capture less attention, but which are no less devastating. The steady degradation of land and natural resources, combined with increasingly unpredictable weather patterns, directly affect the long-term ability of farmers to grow and to provide food. These impacts are particularly severe in the countries that are least able to cope, particularly least developed countries and countries across sub-Saharan Africa. In the face of these challenges, Ireland prioritises our international support of countries that stand to lose the most as a result of climate impacts. The majority of Ireland's climate interventions are in the food, agriculture and livelihoods sector. Within these sectors, we prioritise adaptation and resilience, responding to the growing pressure faced by food producers. Again, I'd like to thank my colleagues from USAID for your ongoing collaboration, for your active engagement in finding shared solutions to the challenges that we will discuss today. And I want to acknowledge the ongoing importance of collaborating with our partners on the African continent. And I'm delighted to see His Excellency Honourable Michael Youssef here today and to hear more of how his country, Malawi, is responding to the climate crisis and to food and nutrition insecurity. And I look forward to our discussion. Later, I want to thank Lawrence for moderating our discussion. As Lawrence knows, Ireland has a well-established partnership with the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and we greatly value your leadership and contribution to delivering quality and nutritious food. And I want to acknowledge and thank the ongoing work of our partners working in food and nutrition, many of whom are represented here today. We remain fully committed to supporting your work, and we've been actively involved in the next replenishment of the International Fund for Agricultural Development, which is a long-standing partner of ours, and we will double our funding to 25 million to the fund, and we've announced that today. And we welcome the ambition and intention of IFAD to mobilise more climate financing for its work in the coming years. So I think this event demonstrates that we can and should continue to bring together expertise and insights from across themes of food, nutrition, and climate action. I hope I stayed within my time. Thank you.
Remarkably disciplined. Thank you, Kanishta. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Kanishta. Good enough? All right, good, thank you. That's my main source of anxiety for this whole session was that. Thank you for really setting the scene for us. I'd like to introduce the other two panelists and ask them to come up to the stage. First of all, His Excellency Michael Ussi. Michael is the Minister for Natural Resources and Climate Change in Malawi. Over to you. And then we need some tech support. Yeah, you're coming soon. Then we have, just want to get Dina's title exactly right. We have Dina Esposito. Dina is the Assistant to the Administrator for the Bureau for Resilience, Environment and Food Security at the United States Agency for International Development. Dina. So let me begin the session. I don't stand in front of our panelists. Let me ask Michal, if I may call you that. How is Ireland really responding to the growing climate risks and the vulnerability of the food and ag sector? It's not easy to do this. What's Ireland doing in this space?
I mean, both nationally and globally. Well, I think globally our focus is on least developed countries, small island developing states, and on developing sort of resilience in food production systems. And that's why we've doubled our allocation to the fund, which to 25 million per annum. And I think that's important. But also, what we're interested in really is to try and get practical application of the funding, like in Malawi or in other countries. I was in Mozambique during the summer and saw it firsthand how we were assisting local producers in terms of quality of crop, resilience of seeds, and that are conscious of the climate issue. And we are a country that has expertise in food production, and we have lots of heated domestic debate in terms of both food security, climate security, food production system in Ireland. But I think in terms of the global, we will continue to support the least well off, those who need help most in terms of the impact of climate. To try and I think the further point is we're always searching to see how do we integrate more of our wider development aid program with the climate agenda. There needs to be greater interconnection. We can't look at this in silos. So we are seeking in our various programs in different countries to try and marry up, if you like, the different aspects of our development aid more generally, and then the additional climate finance and funding that we bring to the table, because we've been very clear at governmental level, any climate finance money is an addition to our development aid. And we have not reduced our development aid last year at all, notwithstanding Ukraine and everything. We increased it. And then we also increased and fulfilled our commitments on the climate finance side.
I think that deserves a round of applause. You answered both my questions at once, so I'm going to throw another question in while I've got you here, Tony. So I remember going to a climate, food security, and nutrition conference in Dublin in 2013, so 10 years ago. So Ireland has been a real leader in this space, sort of breaking down the silos, thinking about the interconnectedness of all the issues. What can we do, and what can you do to help others begin to break these silos down, not see everything in such rigid departmental priorities? What's your secret sauce?
I think, what can we do? I think we need more partnerships. Like we're very pleased with the partnership with USAID in terms of the food production. When I was last foreign minister 10 years ago, I think Tom Arnold would have been involved. I think it was with Hillary Clinton. We did a similar initiative on hunger. So I think our heritage, our history, Ireland has psychologically the scars of a major famine in the 19th century, which wiped out between immigration and death about half the population. So that stays with us. And there is that sense of mission, unstated sometimes, but it is, to me, there's almost an obligation that we do what we can to help feed those who are not in a position to feed themselves right now, but more to enhance their capability to do so, as opposed to just distributing food. We believe in sort of creating the expertise, the methodology, the technology to enable people to grow food, to be able to bring food to market, to increase living standards and so forth in their locations. So I think those kind of partnerships with EU member states as well, with like-minded countries, are key in terms of breaking down the silo approach and looking at the overall picture.
The Team Europe approach seems quite good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Let me pass now to you're both mic'd up. Great. Let me pass now to Minister Ussi. Minister, Malawi has been really severely hit by a number of different natural phenomena, natural crises, weather-related crises over the last, many years, but especially the last 5 years. And we know farming is already a pretty precarious business anyway. And women, of course, are very vulnerable. What other priorities for investment to protect Malawi's agriculture from extreme weather events? What do you think? What would you like to see happen?
Okay, thank you very much. Question. Yes, Malawi has been hit very hard by effects.
Yeah, okay.
Malawi has been hit very hard by effects of climate change for the past 5-6 years. And indeed, the agriculture sector has been affected, just like many other sectors. But agriculture is very, very important to Malawi because it is the lifeline of Malawi. About 80% of the workforce in agriculture are women, and it contributes to about 40% of our GDP. So it is agriculture that makes Malawi Malawi. So anything that disrupts agricultural activities destroys Malawi. Now, with the climate change effects, we have seen that people have lost their produce. Gardens have been washed away. So for Malawi to actually move on, we need to be innovative. We need to do things differently. And I have to thank the United States of America and the Irish Republic for the support that Malawi is getting to ensure that the agriculture industry does not die. If we are to ask for any help that would go into the investment in the agriculture sector is irrigation, because Malawi's agriculture today is heavily dependent on rainfall. Because of climate change, it is obvious that the rainfall is erratic and it is not dependable. So if we were to have irrigation systems, then our farming industry thrive. As government, the president has launched a program on mega farms, moving away from subsistence farming. So in a nutshell, Malawi needs farming that is supported by the irrigation system. Let me conclude by saying it's very, very important, both the relevant partners and Malawi, to understand the chemistry of our problem. And arguably, I'd say, when you see a hyena on your TV screens and you see it in the bush, they are different. Because on the screen, there's no smell. But when you see it in the bush, it smells. We are in Africa. We are living with a problem problem with smelling. So when we come to you to say, help us, because we are not only looking at the problem, we are also experiencing the smell. Thank you.
Let me ask you a very quick follow-up. On the irrigation, which crops would you prioritize in the irrigation?
Maize, we are going to prioritize because it's a food crop, it's also cash crop, groundnuts, soybeans. There's a litany of crops which will fetch high prices outside there.
Mhm.
So we have quite a number of crops to prioritize.
I hope that, I work in a nutrition organization, so I'm going to make a plug for diet diversity and production diversity and fruits and vegetables and pulses, but maybe later.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. That's fantastic. Dean, you manage this incredibly complex bureau that has lots of different objectives. How on earth do you begin to reconcile those and look for the win-wins and manage the trade-offs? Give us some sense of how you do that.
Well, first, I just want to thank both Malawi and Ireland for the extraordinary partnerships that we have building more inclusive, resilient food systems together. And, COP is all about partnerships, right? And creating new forms of partnership. And the aim for climate call to action, which is around investing more in research technology and scaling access to improved technologies, is really central to the initiative of President Biden through both Prepare and the call to action, which we do in partnership with the UAE. We were able to announce Sunday, I think, $100 million of increased investment with the CGIAR for gendered research, adapted seeds, improved soils, improved nutrition and support, and another $50 million to IFAD also. So they are also incredible partners, and they're on the next panel. So I just wanted to acknowledge them. Two of the main things that we're doing right now at USAID is that we have an updated strategy and we have a new structure. So sort of form follows function, right? We want to have a strategy, and our global hunger initiative called Feed the Future has been around for more than a decade, but we're not doing the same thing, right? So it's very, very central is climate adaptation, and healthy, affordable, nutritious diets become very central to the new strategy. And in order to deliver on that new strategy, we have combined our food security and nutrition and security teams with our climate, biodiversity, and environment teams, all under one roof. And I'm going to tell you, we're all under one leadership team, but it's not like we've got it all figured out, right? I mean, it's just a few months now. And, ask me in a year, and maybe I'll tell you what the secret sauce is, but I think there's a lot of work to be done, but it's an exciting time, and I'm already seeing kind of new connections being made. I think it's worth elevating the Malawi partnership that we're doing with Ireland, just to give you a flavor for what that win-win solution looks like. So we came together and invested together between two development agencies, $70 million to promote more climate resilient, nutritious food systems in Malawi. And between our various contacts and partnerships on the ground, we brought 20 private sector companies together with us for this Aim for Climate Sprint, who are by themselves, all told, probably investing $200 million. So leveraging the private sector and public sector together, which is, we anticipate will help hundreds of thousands of smallholder farmers diversify out of monocropping into soy and peanuts and other crops that are nutritious, that also have a knock-on effect of improving soil health. We're going to be helping to link those farmers to markets to boost incomes, and also hopefully sort of incentivize permanent changes in production practices. And at the same time, create alternative fuel sources from agricultural waste and help conserve 150,000 hectares of land. So you're looking at agricultural investments that are also looking at both adaptation and mitigation. And those are the kinds of partnerships that we're going to need to do, much more.
Can I ask you both, Michal and Dina, is this a model that we will see in other countries?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great. I think you have to leave now, or can you stay a bit longer? What's your timing like?
So just keep going. Do never. What do you want to do?
Go on. Well, whatever. That's a dangerous suggestion. I don't want to eat into the time of the other panel, but maybe I can ask each of you just in 30 seconds, what would you like to see different at the next COP? What does progress look like from this COP to the next COP on this kind of agenda? So we didn't script this, so apologies for just landing you in this, but you guys know how to do this.
Well, first of all, look, Ireland is passionate about multilateralism. As a small country, we believe in adherence to the international rules-based order. So hence our participation in UN, European Union, and so on. So what does that mean? It means that COP is very important. And you can get critics and you can get people who will say it's not doing enough and all of that, but we should never lose sight about the absolute essential need for a multilateral forum of this size and scale to keep the focus on climate change. We can understate that. We could take that for granted too quickly and too easily, and we would regret it. As a person, maybe where I just bring my own personality to bear on the question, I'm always for concrete realization of ideas and rhetoric. So generally speaking, I prefer something that approximates more to delivering reality on the ground than the high-sounding rhetoric and all of that. No, I think it matters, but we really have to see impact on the ground. And in many ways, I would have met with the Minister of Sierra Leone earlier. Those kind of meetings matter in terms of those concrete realities. So, because it needs to be bottom up as well, and we need people who are at the forefront, those who are really suffering the most in terms of the impact of climate change, to say to us, here's how we think you can help us best. It can't be top down or we know best. And I think the Malawi example is a good example of that. It's comprehensive. It's multi-dimensional, as been Denise has articulated there. So that's important. So in essence, can we bridge the gap between pledges, rhetoric, and delivery? Is what I would like to see most. And what we pledged, and I was Taoiseach in Glasgow, what I pledged then in terms of commitments on finance, we've delivered. Now, people may say you should have pledged more and deliver more, fine. But I do think it's important that we get into the practice of whatever any country pledges, that it actually delivers. And then also we need to work harder on designing, we have the loss and damage fund now when we have climate finances growing with momentum, but then we have to follow through and design allocation and how we do that effectively for those that are most affected.
Thank you. I guess, Minister Usi, what does bridging the gap between rhetoric and action look like for you?
Well, my response is ethics. Ethics. That's the response. Because pledges have been made before. But now, one of the agendas this time around is global stock taking, looking at what has not been done. Now, it will be a shame that we come again, the next COP, we start to discuss global staking and then looking at what has not been done when we are here for the very same. Malawi has natural resources, and in fact, I'm not talking about Malawi, I'm talking about government as well as the government organizations. We have all agreed that this is our problem. What we need is support. And we do not understand when we hear issues surrounding climate finance definition. There are differences about climate finance definitions. Then we say, but what is happening in Malawi? People dying. This is the definition. What other definition do you want? So for me, for Malawi, we are saying accessibility. Let's access the funds so that we can make a difference. Otherwise, it's a torture to hear about the pledges and people are still suffering. It's not ethical. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, malnutrition is the human face of unchecked climate change. So I totally understand what you're saying. Dina, we'll give you a year to sort out your bureau, no problem. It'll be singing and going beautifully. It is already, but it'll be going seamlessly in a year. What will you be hoping to report on in a year's time?
Um,
I'm not going to hold you to it. Don't worry.
Okay. I think that we do have to increasingly bring together our mitigation and adaptation agendas, right? We've been sort of working in sort of separate areas of that, and there are win-win solutions and landscape-based, watershed-based solutions that all improve both sequester carbon, improve household level access to food and water, and also have productivity benefits. And we have stovepiped funding allocations that make it really hard to put all of that together. It's very complicated from a procurement point of view. So there's a lot of work I think that we need to do. But at COP, I think it would be great to really improve our articulation of what is adaptation and how are we going to measure that. So we're all working together, and that more climate finance is going to these fragile, conflict affected areas that where the most vulnerable, the most hungry, are present, and we are not seeing the flow of those resources, and the benefits of inaction, the costs of inaction are really vast.
Thanks, Tina. And I often say, we often hear people saying this organization should do this, but actually it's your own organization that needs to change as well.
Yeah.
And I think we've got 3 great examples of 3 leaders in this space who are doing things differently to try to break down the silos. So I'd like you to give them a big round of applause in a minute, but thank you to Dina and Michael and Michal.
Thank you.
And you have to leave gracefully.
One of the most
The next panel will come seamlessly up. Wherever you want, ladies. Yeah, we can just pass them out. Yeah. Colleagues, if you'd like to, at the back, if you'd like to come and sit down the front, there's seats.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. There you go. I don't know that. Oh. Or at least higher temperatures.
No need. No need. I'll just share the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. That's crazy. Thank you. All right.
So our audience has dwindled, but it's no reflection on our second panel. We're just going to have a nice chat, right? By the way, I haven't introduced myself. My name's Lawrence Haddad. I'm from the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. I'm available for weddings, bar mitzvahs, other parties. So we've got a really great panel here. These are people I've known and admired for, in some cases, a very long time, and but all of them I know them and admire them greatly, and I think they're doing great work, and I think their best work is yet to come. No pressure, colleagues. I'm going to introduce them briefly and then ask them a couple of questions. So the first panelist, I'll introduce you all and then we'll go into it. First panelist is Joe Puri. Joe is the Associate Vice President, Strategy and Knowledge Department at IFAD. I just know her as Joe. Second is Purnima Menon, Dr. Purnima Menon, who's the Senior Director for Food and Nutrition. Is that title right? Is that Food and Nutrition Policy at the CGIAR. and we have Afshan Khan, and Afshan is the Scaling Up Nutrition Coordinator. It's a great panel. The theme is the same, colleagues. This is my shameless plug for some work that GAIN have been doing. We've just finished this ICAN report, Initiative on Climate and Nutrition, with SUN and with WHO and FAO. And it highlights a number of opportunities for climate folks and climate champions to get involved into nutrition and to contribute, and vice versa, nutrition champions to get involved in climate, because doing that will advance climate and nutrition faster than if they weren't doing it together. The state of the field is pretty fragmented. Procurement policies, food procurement policies, hardly any of them factor sustainability and climate into them. Food-based dietary guidelines, hardly any factor climate into them. Climate financing, hardly any climate financing goes to nutritious foods. Hardly any NDCs have focus on nutritious foods, and hardly any NAPs focus on nutritious foods. So the bad news is these two worlds are pretty disconnected. They're kind of ships passing in the night. The good news is that there's plenty of space for them to become more integrated. So that's the theme, colleagues. What is IFAD, Joe? What is IFAD doing to bring these two worlds together? These two objectives of climate action or resilience and adaptation and mitigation and better nutrition. They can seem very, very separate, but what are you doing to bring them together?
Thanks, Lawrence. So the first message I want to give is that climate is not nutrition neutral, and climate is also not gender neutral. The second is that as we think about, the second is that functionally, how IFAD is organized is that nutrition and climate and gender and youth and social inclusion overall is located within the same department. So that's within my department, and that's essentially how we also try and reduce the silos. So Dina made this really wonderful comment about how we think about stovepiping funding, and that's one of the key silos that we recognized early on. And then the third thing is really to recognize that the Kool-Aid that we've all drunk on the private sector is not truly the Kool-Aid. Because while we are thinking about the quantity of financing coming into this area, and some of the numbers are well known, adaptation is 63 billion of 1.3 trillion of climate finance that has come in. So it's really skewed in terms of how we think about what is adaptive. It's also very skewed when we think about the amount of climate financing that is coming into food systems. It's approximately 3%, which is abysmally and inexcusably low. And recognizing that food systems, of which nutrition are one part, really constitute both a challenge as well as an opportunity. The challenge is because food systems contribute to 1/3 of the overall emissions. That's exactly the opportunity that we should be thinking about more financing coming into food systems if we want to look at low-hanging, win-win opportunities for reducing the amount of greenhouse gas emissions. And if you look at some of the foresight work that many agencies have done, including ourselves, we know that there exist options if we are able to put in sufficient financing for plant-based diets, for diversity in production, for market access, for private sector and nutrition-based initiatives, that agriculture can be a net sink. So, looking at all of these things coming together, first, we've put our own incentives within the organization. 60% of our overall designs have to be nutrition sensitive. 45% of our overall financing that goes out from our core has to be climate positive. It also means we've got safeguards. And when we are working with the private sector, and we've just put out a key initiative called the Africa Rural Adaptation Financing Mechanism, just this week, which brings in $200 million of financing from different agencies, including the GCF, including the Nordic Development Fund, including the government of Denmark, the government of Finland, as well as ourselves, and Equity Bank, which is a bank looking at 4 different countries in East and Southern Africa, so Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda. we are essentially ensuring that when those credit lines are set up, they are low interest, longer tenors, but really looking at those that are nutritionally deprived and that are truly vulnerable. And so the credit lines, the taxonomy for what constitutes eligible activities has to include nutrition and adaptive activities.
A really very practical incentives, institutional incentives to make this happen. And I really like climate is not neutral, nutrition neutral, and nutrition is not climate neutral either. So I'll be stealing that language. Very rest assured. Thank you, Joe. Purnima, CGIAR is one of the, I mean, probably the biggest collection of stellar researchers in the world, right? But research can be really quite stovepiped as well. What are you doing to break the barriers down?
So 10,000 scientists across 15 CGIAR centers, that's what we are. Each center has its own critical focus. But one of the things that has happened in the reform process that we've been through in the last 3 years is the creation of these research initiatives that were designed as part of our new research portfolio, very different from the way we've done our business before. You know, they were ground up, cross CGIAR center, often cross-sectoral teams coming together to say, what are we going to do about mitigation? What are we going to do about nutrition and diets? So we have a whole series of thematic, but yet cross-center, which means we're really tapping into the interdisciplinary strength of the ways in which we work. But not just that, we also brought a sense of place to how that research is done. So for the first time and maybe I'm somewhat wrong, but I really think it's for the first time, we have geographically and regionally linked initiatives. And to someone who spent, most of my research career sitting and working in a region and really thinking about how do we bring things together with a sense of place, recognizing that impact happens in places around the world, decisions made by local decision makers, local politicians, local technocrats, local bureaucrats. And if we're working, thematically, but without this sense of place in our work, we're not able to connect the dots effectively enough. So I'm excited about, what we've worked together in the CG, both the sense of, thematic interdisciplinary research initiatives, as well connecting that with research initiatives that bring that sense of place. Now, the CG is known for reform. So, we're updating our portfolio again as we look forward and thinking hard about even more coherence. How do we connect, some of the topical initiatives to deliver even more topical coherence? How do we lean in on learning together on methods and all kinds of things? But for me, if we want, and this COP was really interesting. It's my first COP, but I understand it's the first COP where the idea of local action has been so championed. I mean, Michael Bloomberg brought together, I don't know, hundreds of, mayors from across the United States, local action communities. And we need that to happen at a much broader scale, because that's where we can connect the dots. Our own research on multi-sectoral convergence, for example, in really thinking about how do you bring together multiple streams of policy to have an impact, highlights that at the end of the day, when people work together closer and closer to the ground, there literally are no silos left anymore, because you're working towards a sense of, common commitments to something that's larger than just your thematic agenda. So I think, I have no doubt that, this emphasis on local action and bringing together that for multiple disciplinary goals or the multiple SDGs is going to be critically important. I know many development agencies are thinking that way. We've brought that sense of place as well into how we operate. But we have problems too. I'm really struck by how little data there is at local levels where decisions are made to help us understand how to transform food systems. You have been doing amazing work on bringing together the food systems dashboard, the Countdown Initiative and all of that. A lot of that is still at the national level. What happens when you want to start transformation at the district level? I think successes that we've seen in local food systems transformation are invariably at the city level, at really local levels where that leadership leans in. And so I think, again, as a research collective, if I may call the CGIAR that, but we also work with so many other partners that it isn't just us. Really understanding how to transform things locally for global action is going to be critical. But there's lots of stuff happening, I think, in the global arena that we need to understand from a research perspective. And, we're gearing up to do that as well.
Thanks, Purnima. You're so right. Families and communities, they can't afford to think in silos. I mean, we're the only group that think we can afford the luxury of silos, and actually we can't. Just on the dashboard, thank you for the shout out. There are now 8 subnational dashboards. The Indonesia one goes right down to 500 sub-districts. Talk to Bhuvana about the India one. You need to be involved in that. Okay. Our last panelist, but certainly not least, is Afshan Khan. Afshan. Afshan's been a partner in Prime on the ICANN report. The report shows that there's not enough real connection between nutrition and NDCs. Interestingly enough, the national nutrition plans have more climate in them than the NDCs have nutrition in them. Maybe that's not so surprising. But so what? What's next for the Sun coordinators? They've got to, all their countries have to redo their NDCs by COP30, I think. What support do they need to make that happen? To get nutrition in.
Thanks, Lawrence, and thanks for the question, and for Ireland and USAID for hosting this event. It's really a privilege to be here, including with Jyoti and Purnima. I think, first of all, Lawrence, I want to go back to the point you started with. There's a real opportunity with the NDCs being redone to better put in nutrition. With food-based dietary guidelines as well, only 11% recommend eating climate-friendly foods with clear examples of how to do so. So we have to get to that very clearly and support governments to do it. Earlier this morning, I was meeting with the National Planning Commission director from Ghana. Ghana has just put in place very clear food-based dietary guidelines. How do we get systematic about that? And then public procurement in countries, whether it's school meals, hospitals, how do we make sure that as a mechanism is also very clear that they're focusing on nutritious food? And with the big political push on school meals, I think that's extremely important to get there as well. I would say Sun as a country-driven, country-led movement, I want to come back to the point Purnima made, which is the localization agenda. And we're really focused on going from the national nutrition plans down to the subnational, because I think that's where the rubber hits the road. And when you look for concrete actions of what needs to be done at the country level, bring those up to connect global norms, standards, and policies with local level action. That's the piece where the Sun country networks need to come together more closely. And Lawrence is being modest, again, leads the Sun Business Network. And in that sense, I think as we get to these food-based dietary guidelines, the role of private sector in production of locally nutritious foods for local markets at an affordable price is part of the game changer for addressing malnutrition. I think when the Malawian minister spoke, he spoke about agricultural production, the need for nutritious food crops. That's a key part of it. But another key part of it is the affordability and local production. And that's where I think we can always make a difference for the pieces Jyoti spoke about in terms of having women, farmers, producers, distributors of food, really having the resources both to create their own business acumen, but I think importantly also influence the nutritional outcomes for their children. Because the investments that are made there are investments that are made in transforming the nutrition piece. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Sun Civil Society Network as well, because there's been quite a bit done there in increasing agricultural budgets for smallholder farmers and tax abatements. So that multi-sectoral approach with key stakeholders focused on the country level is, I think, where Sun can add value add with its partnership with bilateral partners, the Sun Business Network and the Civil Society Network, under a government-led focus.
Thank you. When all of those partners and stakeholders are aligned, they're unstoppable, right? And thank you for saying Lawrence is being modest. That doesn't happen very often.
I'm sure.
Colleagues, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes for quick questions from the floor. Anyone got any questions? I'm sure you do. Don't be shy. This is my mistake for not planting some questions in the audience. I think we should probably call it quits at this stage. And let me ask you each to say 30 seconds. Same question I asked the previous panel. What do you want to see different? What does success look like in a year's time for this agenda? We've had the UAE declaration, right, on December the 1st.
Yeah.
How do we build on that? 30 seconds.
Thanks, Lawrence. So success for me would mean that there needs to be at least a quadrupling of the amount of financing going into adaptation. Because adaptation is a many splendid thing. You think about nutrition, you think about gender, you think about resilience overall. And we have to attack this in a non-siloed way. So unless we all commit to recognizing that, yes, we are going to have disasters, we're going to have conflicts, but $1 invested today is going to save us $7 to $9 of humanitarian and or emergency funding later. We're not going to be able to stop this unless we make that commitment. Thanks.
Thank you. Another great soundbite. Adaptation is a many splendid thing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Afshan.
Lawrence, I would say just 2 things. One, we have a real opportunity as the NDCs are being redone to really focus on putting nutrition in there. And as we redo the national nutrition plans, to look at what initiatives can also help address climate and what kind of investments need to be made in national nutrition.
Let me interrupt you. What is the sun coordinators? What do they need to make that happen?
So this is where I'm coming to.
Okay.
Every country has raised financing as a key issue. And financing and technical assistance. So technical assistance to be able to help bring these plans together, and then financing to be able to execute and implement. And I think you started with saying, we're around 3% of looking at climate financing going into nutrition. That needs to change.
Lawrence, to me, look at the pledge made at this conference from promises to progress. So I want to see a commitment to accountability in every statement that comes out of these meetings, not just a commitment to recognizing the problem and to saying we're going to do some things, but to actually commit to say we are willing to be held accountable until political leaders say that, until people pledging money say that, until people committing to action say that we are committed to being held accountable. It doesn't give those of us who want to collect the data, to track the data, the ability to use that to say, listen, you said you were going to change this. This is where you are. You said you were going to contribute to these outcomes. This is where you are. Right now, we don't have a commitment to accountability. And I have the data to say that we don't have the commitment to accountability across multiple global meetings. More on that coming soon.
I think it is really surprising. I was asking some of the COP gurus. This is only my 3rd COP. And I was asking some of the COP gurus, what is the accountability mechanism? And it's a real patchwork of things. And too easy to slip through that patchwork. So maybe on the nutrition bit, we can do better. Maybe with the Global Nutrition Report, and so we can do better, I think. And the WBA. And you look like you want to see
too. Well, I think the Global Nutrition Report was leading in doing some of this accountability tracking, but there's so much more to be done.
Yeah.
So let's try to connect those dots.
Colleagues, I don't have any profound words of wisdom. This is a challenging space. It's always challenging to work in areas that are adjacent to what the work that you've spent most of your life doing, but it's incredibly enriching. So we have to be intellectually curious. We have to get out of our comfort zones, and we have to think laterally, not unilaterally. So please express your appreciation for this wonderful panel. Sorry about that, Patrick.